This presentation is titled People or Process, Which Has a Greater Effect on Project Success? And in this session we'll discuss understanding why people rely on processes so heavily, the three types of processes, understanding how over-relying and over-applying processes can be negative, learning the effect of our social environment on how we do estimates, and learning how to balance the application of processes and still motivate people. Our speaker is Todd Williams, and he is the president and CEO of eCameron. And his goal is to improve how companies implement their strategic plans from definition to ensuring the proper people are in place. His passion is removing corporate roadblocks and bridging the gaps from vision to profitability. Utilizing 25 years of experience, he helps companies ranging from startups to multi-billion-dollar corporations achieve their goals. By understanding the reasons for failure, organizations can become resistant to it. His team at eCameron, whose mantra is strategy, people, process, and then technology, specializes in rescuing projects and helping organizations drive business value from their strategy. As an expert witness, Mr. Williams has used his skills to assist companies that have fallen prey to unqualified third-party integrators that were not focused on the correct methodology or delivering an end result that provided a usable solution. In his book, Rescue the Problem Project, he defines the project audit and recovery process for rescuing red projects that focuses on root cause correction and prevention. He's also a writer for CEO Magazine, American Management Association, his own Back from the Red blog, and contributes to numerous other publications including Fortune, CNN Money, CIO Update, ZDNet, Enterprising CEO, and IT Business Edge. So with that, I'll turn it over to our speaker, Mr. Todd Williams.
Thank you. So how many of you like people? Raise your hand. I saw a couple of people go, yeah, you know. Is that like what situation and what person is it? Is that, yeah, I know some of that. Been there, done that. How about this, process? How many of you like process? Come on, be honest, yeah. Process is kind of neat, right? Because it kind of controls things, makes things kind of cool. How about this? There's some of you out there, I know, that whenever there's an actual problem in a process, you got to figure it out, you got to do that root cause analysis, dig in and fix it. Who likes that? Wow, it got a little bit smaller. Hands weren't going quite as high on that one. You know, now I'm going to really put the pressure on. You guys think I'm sweating, I'm going to make you sweat. I need 2 volunteers. And it's a crowded room, so I was going to pick on the people in the back, but it's a little hard to get to them. Come on, 2 volunteers. Really quick, it's just going to take a short time. Okay, come on up to you 2. Okay? Kathy?
Yes.
Kathy, Todd, huh? And Michelle.
Yep.
Okay? So we're going to just model out a business here. Kathy, you're going to be the management that's kind of running the show. Michelle, you're going to be the individual contributor who actually gets something done. I didn't. That sounded bad. I didn't quite mean it that way. I'm going to be the executive, right? That's because I got the tie. Right? I must be qualified. I have a tie, right? Okay. Kathy,
yeah.
I've been meaning to talk to you about Michelle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle's not really doing a great job. Okay, and I need you to talk to her about improving her performance. I mean, she's just not quite there. Okay, and if we don't see some change in Michelle, we're likely going to have to get rid of her. So can you please talk to her about improving and getting better, please?
Sure. Can you give me some specifics, please?
Well, I just told you, she's not doing well. I'm an executive. Do you think I really get down into those details? You should see this stuff. You should know it.
Okay.
Okay, so can you please talk to her about that? That's good enough. Good enough. How many of you like doing this? Usually there is, I knew it, I knew there would be one person back there in the corner. Everybody where's the photographer? Take a picture of him, stay away from him. He likes doing that, okay? We don't like doing that. Is it we don't like Michelle? You're willing to fix a process and make it work better, but poor Michelle. Do you have a lot of enemies here?
Yeah.
You do? Yeah. Because they don't want to help you out. right?
No.
None of them were going to raise their hand to help you move forward and get past this rough spot. And obviously the executive, that jerk over there, not the one that's over here, the one that was over there, okay, that he had it out for you, right? It was not good, okay? So why won't you guys help out Michelle?
Right, put a target on their back.
Might put a target on their back. Let's give a round of applause for these two. How many of you had that gut reaction? I know the two up front did, but the minute I started saying what she had to do, you kind of went, oh God, I'm glad I'm not up there. And boy, what if I had to do that at work? Right? How many of you had that sinking feeling like, God, I'm glad I'm not there? It's pretty serious. And here's our problem. We like working with process. We like fixing process. We like people. But when it gets down to the point of helping people improve and actually stepping in and coaching them and getting them moving and doing something different with them, we hate it. We don't want to be there. Hey, let me get back to my job, right? I just don't want to be there. I mean, I got employees. I'm not saying this is just you guys. I have the same issue. So what we're trying to do today in this session is to take a look at people and process and which one has a bigger influence on the success of a project and where we need to change and focus our attention, okay? We're going to have a little bit of a video. We're going to have a couple of exercises in here. No one else is coming back up here, so you can calm down. You know, that's another presentation where I get like half the room involved, but not in this one. Okay? So let's start with a story. This story is about a project eons ago. This was back in 1996 or 7, somewhere back in that time frame. It was actually the very first time I was called in as an auditor on a project. And I thought, well, boy, that's pretty cool. I could be an auditor. You know, get pumped out my chest and everything else. It was a fixed price project. It had been running for a couple of years. Key to fixed price project, everybody understands fixed price versus T&M. You know, somebody says, here's the price. They got to deliver. If they don't, things fall apart really fast, right? And there was it was red. Actually, that's a little bit of hindsight in there. The project manager said, well, I'm having a few problems, and I think my numbers may be off. We called it red. That's why you have these little watermelons on here. Okay, this is one of those watermelon projects. It was green on the outside. Everybody thought it was doing really good, but when you looked inside, it was really, really red. Okay, so that's why you have that to help you with that. Okay. And the first thing I do anytime I take a look at a project, audit a project, is I try to figure out what the project's supposed to be doing. Novel idea, huh? Right? So you take the contract, you look at the contract, read that, then you go over and you grab the change order log, right? How many changes have I had on this thing? So this project, fixed price, running for 2 years, had about 5 change orders on it. I knew a lot of the people. I knew maybe half the people on this project. It was for a company that doesn't exist anymore by the name of Digital Equipment Corporation. And I knew maybe half the people on the team. And they were really good people. I was really kind of surprised that this project would be in trouble with that many really sharp people on here. And these guys we'd have the water cooler conversation, or for those of the same gender, the men's room conversation where, hey, come here, I gotta talk to you, right? And they'd haul you into some corner room or whatever. And they were really frustrated the project wasn't going anywhere, but they couldn't tell me why. And I thought, I've worked with you guys. You're senior people. You've been in this industry for 20 years, and you can't tell me why? Help me out here. I really need to understand this thing. Then about day 2. Day 2, I heard that there was a steering committee meeting with the customer involved. And I went and I said, okay, well, as the auditor, I probably need to sit inside that meeting. So I puff out my chest and I go out to the project manager. Well, I'd like to go to that meeting. And he looked at me and goes, oh, no, you don't understand. The only people who go to the steering committee meeting are myself and my project assistant. I said, oh, I haven't met the project assistant yet. Oh, well, yeah, that's Craig. Oh. Well, what does he do? Well, he makes sure that everybody's working the right tasks, and he kind of makes sure that people are going down and getting the tasks done on time. And if they need anything to do their tasks, then he goes out and he gets the supplemental information they need to do that task. And then he runs up all the budget numbers and compiles those up and kind of gets them into order so that I can present them at whatever meeting. And you know, if we have any risks, he maintains the issues log, and I'm sitting there going, He's the project assistant? What do you do? Right? I'm kind of confused on that one. And so I called down to my boss and I said, well, things are going okay. It was kind of a 4-day check, and he said, but there's a steering committee meeting come up. I'd really like to be in it, and only the project manager and his assistant go to this thing. And I just seems kind of odd. And Dick said, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it at all. Well, the next morning I show up. Hey, Todd, you want to go to the steering committee meeting with me? So I got to get into the steering committee meeting and start hearing some of the little things that were going on that were a little strange. So from that description right there, can somebody tell me what do they see so far as the big issues on this project? Now remember, I've been on this project by the time I compiled those notes, somewhere between 2 and 3 days. What kind of things do you see?
Seems like there's some type of communication gap.
You think there's just a little bit of a communication gap? I think you're right. Yeah. Well, what else? Anything else? Anything with a fixed price concept on this project? Have you guys worked a lot? Has anybody worked fixed price contracts before? For 2 years long, how many change orders should you have on a fixed price contract? Software? 5 or 50, right? The first thing you see in there is that really the change orders are way too low. For a software project, by the time it's fixed price, these guys are putting out a definition of what this project should be. 2 years ago, a lot of stuff happens. Change orders have to happen. They have to be documented. So the changes are probably happening, but nobody's documenting them. And money's not changing hands, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in here that isn't probably quite right. Okay? Communication was hampered. I looked for the most politically correct word that I could put up there because all the other words that came to mind weren't really what I would say in public in a presentation. Okay? What wasn't said was whenever I went to the steering committee meeting, what I found out was the customer was actually missing their deliverables. They had a set of things that they were supposed to be providing to our team so we could do our work, and we weren't getting that. And I went, how is that getting hidden? Why am I not hearing this from people? Why aren't people screaming and hollering that I can't do my job? Because what they were missing in the equipment world was they were missing equipment communication specifications, and we had to write interfaces to this equipment. This is like the foundation, right? The project manager didn't know that. He had no concept that that was actually the problem, right? So back to this communication, what the project manager was really doing, totally out of touch with what was actually happening in the project. He was a 20-year veteran of being a project manager. This organization had does anybody know the Digital Equipment Corporation from 20 years ago? Okay, so if you did, so 1% at least, they had a reputation for being exquisite project managers. They had droves of documentation. They had procedures. They had a change request procedure. It was written, I read it, it was there. People weren't following it. People weren't communicating, people weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. They weren't following any of the procedures on the entire project. Our only solution to this problem was to change the project manager. And it wasn't that he was bad, it's just he wasn't following any of the procedures they had in place. They had the processes. It was him that was the problem. Moved him out, brought somebody else in, and we were able to turn the project around to a green project in about 4 months. Okay? The customer didn't like it very much because I did go and put a $110,000 change request on the steering committee chair's desk. That kind of helped get some attention fairly quickly to getting some of these problems taken care of. But he wasn't about ready to go out and have that confrontational type of situation with the client, with the customer. I talked to him at one point. I said, where are all the change orders? He goes, well, we can't have change orders. Whenever they actually signed the contract, they said there will be no change orders. So we don't have any change orders. And I looked at him and I said, something very similar to, and sounds like, baloney. Okay? And he opened his, those blue lab books. He finally opened his blue lab notebook. And in the back, there were 4 pages of penciled in change orders where him and the other project manager for the customer had sat down and kind of swapped things out. Well, if I give you this, then you give me that. But of course, the customer was better than he was, so that imbalance was a couple $100,000. So I took his book from him when he left, and I actually wrote change orders for all that stuff, and we cleared all that up. It was not a happy time with the customer. Customer wasn't really like endearing, didn't really think I was a great person, because here I was laying all these change orders on top of them. But that had to be done. Okay? What I then did, after doing a number of these things, this is probably about 3 or 4 years ago, is I sat down and looked at all the projects that I had recovered and said, okay, what were the problems with those? And this is a little bit subjective when you do this, because you have to kind of, what was the real key failure reason? And there's never one thing. There's 5 or 6 things that actually bring a project down. So you try to rank them. So I put things into 3 different buckets: team, process, and customer. I know the customer's always right, but sometimes they can be the source of a failure. I hate to say it. So team, fairly simple things: communication, management support. Management support, how many of you guys have management to support you? I mean, how many of you like management support? You're supposed to all laugh at that one, right? I'm from management. I'm here to help. Yeah, right, okay? Oh, that attitude, motivation, that was a bad attitude, wasn't it? Okay. So people's attitude, their motivation to actually get something done. Skill set. How many of you guys have people on your project that actually don't know what they're supposed to do, or they know what they're supposed to do, but they don't know how to do it? There's some giggles coming from the center of the crowd here, okay? I feel really sorry for these people who end up getting assigned to a project because, well, he's on the bench. We need to get him into something so we can keep him, but that person doesn't know what they're really supposed to be doing and how to do it. They're supposed to be OJT, right, on the job training. How many of you in your project budget have that little line that says on the job training budget, and you have like $50,000 allocated to on the job training? Can you raise your hand if you have that line item? I didn't think so. We don't do a lot of that on projects, right? How about process? Well, we saw a lot of failure because of change management and scope issues. I could not disengage those two from one another. That was probably one of a huge issue. Documentation. How many of you like doing documentation? Somebody comes in, hey, I'll write that down. I'll write that spec. There's always 3 or 4 in the crowd. You guys must. Okay, whatever. Estimation. How many people like to do estimates? Pick me, pick me, pick me. I like to do estimates. No? Okay. Risk management. I do a lot of stuff on risk management. I've written programs for calculating out risk because I'm an old programmer from way back when. I've written chapters and books on, or not books, articles on statistics and process control and statistical process control. Risk is all about statistics, and I'm horrible at it. I am absolutely horrible at it. Every risk that I put down, yeah, we monitor that and all that, but there's always that other risk. Where did it come from, right? Risk is really, really hard to control. And then from the customer standpoint, poor product knowledge. This might be a little bit biased. I've done a lot of work for system integrators, people that come out to try to glue stuff together. And so you're generally hired by a client because the client doesn't have the knowledge, so they're hiring in the knowledge. So poor product knowledge of what they're trying to build, and then as you educate them and they start seeing what's going on, they go, ooh, hey, that's cool, and maybe I could do this, and maybe I could do that. Hence scope control. Lack of project management knowledge is another one. Again, a little bit biased because they were hiring project management knowledge. And then difficult. Some customers are just difficult. Does anybody ever have a customer that's difficult? Or is it just me? It could be just my personality, I'm not sure. Okay, I guess it's just me. So when I look at that and I say, hey, wait a minute, I put these in these buckets of team, people, process. What really is there involved in that? Well, obviously the first one's all about people, right? The second one, well, that's a little bit of a mixture of people and process, because even though it is process, I just gave you an example of someone who wasn't following a process. So whenever I look at some of these processes that are out there, it was people who were actually causing the problem in the process. There was something there to follow. They either didn't understand it or didn't want to follow it, right? Going back to I'm the MC, I should remember his name. Carl this morning actually said was change, right? The minute I put in a process, it's a change, people just don't want to do it. Okay? And the very last one is poor product knowledge. It's the customer, that's definitely people. So when I really look at these things, there's an overwhelming amount of people that's causing these problems, not the process. We have to have process. I'm not saying get rid of process. You work on one of my projects, man, you're going to have a change control process and I'm going to shove that down your throat. You are going to write an email or a minutes on every single meeting you go to. That will be it. I am a little Hitler when it comes to certain types of processes. They will be controlled. But that doesn't get the project done. It doesn't get it done correctly. It's really people who are focused on that. Okay? Now, do I have any empirical data? Do I have anything that I can go out and say, well, there was a study done in 2007, and no, I don't have that. I can dream something up. As a presenter, I have that right, that I can go and I can find data anywhere, and I can start molding it and folding it together to give my answer that I want to give, right? So with that disclaimer, let's go through and let's take a look at some things. So PMI membership. Okay? There's been a huge upsurge. This is exponential growth in PMI membership. What does PMI push? What have they pushed? They're starting to get more and more into soft skills, but they push process, right? Let's get the processes down. And I'm not saying that we need to get rid of processes. Make sure you understand that. But with this huge number, this exponential growth of PMPs out there on the block, trying to get things done, looking at process, putting process in place, I would see some sort of a change in project success, right? That's kind of the idea. So to get that data, I have to go out to a company called the Standish Group. Has anybody ever heard of the Standish Group? They've been publishing data for, well, since 1994 on project success rates. And they calculate this out based off of scope, schedule, and budget, right? And did you hit the scope, schedule, and budget? If you didn't, then you were a challenge project. If someone somewhere along the way said, cancel it, we're not going to do this anymore, then it became a cancel. So maybe a little bit subjective between the success and challenge. There's not really much subjectivity between I canceled it and it's still running, right? And so these are the numbers all put together in a graph. So if we do look, that success line has been increasing. Last number I had from them was 2008. I'm sorry for my old data. I think that 2010 data was just a little bit above that where that black line is supposed to be, okay? But what we see here is those are still pretty dismal numbers, right? We're down here, I mean, when they first did this thing, it was 16% success rate. Back up here, it was, in the low 30s. It's actually not a straight line. It's kind of asymptotic to the 40% line. So if you run that out a little ways, it never really hits 40%. But the interesting part is this success and cancel line. So if I start taking a look at those two and I actually plot the challenged as, or the canceled as not canceled, right? So I get the inverse of the number. Those two pretty much lie on top of one another. So what's really happening, I think, between those two numbers, and if you look at this inflection point, right, at about the time whenever the dot-com bubble burst and that sort of thing right up in here, okay, what you're going to see, I think, is that people said, I have a challenge project, I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to quit throwing good money at bad. So most of what we see in here in these changes between the success and the challenged and canceled projects is really just managerial decisions. I'm going to run it or not. That was a huge factor, I know personally, from 2009, because we fixed failed projects. Whenever 2009 came around, there was not one failing project out there to be fixed. They canceled them, they were off the books, done, right? We weren't going to waste any money. We were going to save every penny we had. So I think that was actually all better management. The other trend I've seen is projects are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. People don't want to run the $20, $30, $40 million project that takes 2 to 3 years to run. They want to start running projects that are much smaller. They can be done in 9 to 12 months. Anybody else seen that trend where you want to run smaller projects? Let's see a couple of hands go up. Because smaller projects are easier to handle. We can keep them in our head, right? We can actually think about them, okay? We all know that something smaller, getting 5 people in one room is a heck of a lot easier than getting 110 people in one room. I don't think it's related to process. I think process is still needed to make success, but it's not moving the curve. What really needs to move the curve is people, okay? So why is it that we like process? What is it that is so good about process? Well, most of the time we think about process as this. as this. The stuff that we actually see at work. This is a value stream mapping that we did a while back. And people look, oh yeah, and then we do this, and it's all about process. And that's what we think about. But process really drives our life. There's our personal process. When you get up in the morning, do you do the same thing every single morning? You get up, you let the dog out, or you turn on the coffee pot, or you go and wash your face, or whatever it is. You probably walk the same path every single day. Put footprints on your bedroom floor. Not that I want to be in your bedroom. You put footprints on your bedroom floor. You step in exactly the same spot every single day. That continues. You do the same regimen of when you brush your teeth, you take a shower, you do all that. When you drive to work, how many of you drive to work, get to work, and can't remember driving to work? That's because you have that so committed to process, it's like riding a bicycle. You have actually pushed it way down. It actually means you're a pretty good driver, believe it or not. Okay, for those of you who are really frightened about it, it actually does mean you're a fairly decent driver. The reason is because all the stuff that is normal, that goes on in your commute to work, is running way, 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 way down in the bottom of your brain. It's like riding a bicycle. When you ride a bicycle, how many people actually think about riding a bicycle? Okay, oh wait, I gotta lean this, oh I gotta lean that way. You don't, it just automatically happens. And that's what's happening whenever you do something repeated times. One right after the other, right after the other, right after the other. What you remember whenever you go to work is that jerk. You know that jerk, right? Pulled out in front of you, didn't use a turn signal, cut you off, then you get to work and there's that jerk in your parking place. You know that jerk in your parking place. Well, okay, so the parking place doesn't have your name on it, does it? But it's your parking place, right? I love visiting companies. I get there really early in the morning and I park right up front and I think I just ruined a whole bunch of people's day because I got here first and then that guy's gonna have to park here and that one's gonna have to park here and that one's gonna have to park here. Nobody's gonna be in their own place. I just caused havoc. Isn't that cool? I'm really not a mean guy, but there's just some things that are kind of. That's how embedded process is in our lives. Okay? You turn on your turn signal when you get on the freeway. The turn signal, that's the knob that's on the left-hand side. Just explain all the terms. You turn on your turn signal when you get on the freeway, on that commute, within the same 50 feet every single day. Statistics. It's amazing stuff. Really cool. We are slaves of process. There's another type of process. There's a process, how many of you remember this one where Captain Sullenberger actually put the plane in the Hudson River, okay? He was running on an extreme amount of process at that point, okay? Does anybody know why this was considered to be a successful no-power landing? A successful no-power landing means, obviously you have no power. Success means no one was killed, okay? And they went back through, the FAA and the NTSB went back through all the records and they figured out the common thread. So what was the common thread with this and every other no power successful landing? Any ideas?
No one was injured or killed?
No, what was the thing, there was no one injured here, by definition. What was the thing that made this the contributing factor, the most important thing? What part of process?
Training?
What kind of training?
Emergency?
What kind of emergency training? Actually, it wasn't emergency training, so what kind of training?
Water.
Wasn't water. Wasn't landing. It was what? Non-power. Do you realize that up until this accident, that no trainer, the simulators, none of the simulator training had a full no-power takeoff test. They did not do that in the simulator. They do now, but they didn't then. They would have no power single engine failure, but they considered it to be such a low rare occurrence that you would ever lose both engines on takeoff that it was wasting people's time, okay? Until some geese flew in front. The single contributing factor that they put onto this as a successful landing was that Captain Sullenberger had glider training. Right? Glider training. So tow the plane up in the air, cut the thing, and then you glide back down, right? And every other pilot who had had good, successful landings with no power had glider training. Now, someone's got to explain to me, I assume most of you ride a bicycle and most of you actually drive a car. How many of you, when you are driving your car down the road, say, hey, here is an urgent situation. On my bicycle, I do this. Anybody? I ride a bicycle a lot, and I wouldn't do that. But somehow, at least I don't think I would, okay? Somehow Sullenberger took this training that he had had in an airplane, granted it was an airplane, but an airplane that had no power, 2 people could lift it up, and maybe it held 2 people, period. Right? And he put that into his mind to go take care of a plane that has 150 people, 125 people in it, 2 huge engines, weighs a couple of tons, a few tons, many tons. How did he do that? So we do rely on process. It is critical. So, man, Todd, you're sitting here telling me that people are the most important, and then you're telling me process is the most important. The thing is we have been totally, I don't want to say brainwashed, we've been totally sucked into this concept of process because we see it work, and we see it work all around us. Okay? So let's talk about some processes that I think are a little bit challenging now and then. Okay? Estimation processes. There's a whole slew of them out there. There's budgeting, there's PERT, there's Delphi, there's like all sorts of things that you can do. But how do we actually get estimates? What is it whenever I come up to you, Scott, and I say, Scott, I need an estimate for something? How do you actually come up with that estimate?
Take it off.
You take it off? You take off the estimate? No, I need a number. How long is it going to take you?
Off the quantities.
You take off the quantities? I need to understand that one.
I'm in construction.
Oh, you're in construction. Ah, okay. So you go back to prior experience, you take a look at what you had before, then you add 20%, right? Maybe 30%, maybe a little bit more, right? They're really kind of guesses. You use some sort of external source, but you end up giving a number you feel comfortable with. Right? That's what you're saying. I feel comfortable by doing this process, and now I'm going to go work it. Right? That's a people thing. That's not a process thing. I've actually watched people with a construction estimator, and they put all the 2-befores and the lengths of this and the heights of that and the thickness of that. And when they're all done, then they write the number down, they go over to a calculator, they type in a number and say, yep, there's a number. Because they go and they adjust it up to wherever it's supposed to be. The construction estimator is probably pretty correct. I mean, it does go through tons and tons of data. Okay? Let me see if you guys can keep your numbers straight here. Let's take you through 3 different examples. Okay? You're going to go to the airport. Okay? So put yourself someplace, work, home, I don't care. Here, I don't know how far the airport is from here, but think about you're going to go to the airport. And the following situation comes up. Your phone rings. You answer it. Hey, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in Denver, and I got to come back to Sioux Falls, and I need somebody to pick me up. You know, well, why do you need somebody to pick you up? Have your spouse come pick you up. Well, yeah, that's a little bit of a problem. You see, I left, and you know, we're not. She's getting stressed out because I'm always on the road and things aren't working right, and we had 2 cars, but my truck died, and you know, man, she's just really upset. And then the dog died this week, and she doesn't want anything to do with me. I mean, this guy lives a country western song, right? So you're going to go pick this person up at the airport. How much time are you going to allot to get from wherever you're at to the airport to go get them? Write it down, think about it, whatever, kind of lodge it in your head. Okay? Situation 2, your boss calls. She's in LA, coming back, phone rings. Hey, I need you to pick me up at the airport because my husband was eating a nut pie and he broke a tooth and had to go to the dentist. So he's going to be knocked out, and I need somebody to pick me up and take me back to the office. And what we'll do, I think, I know I'm late on your review, so on the way back to the office from the airport, let's just try to cover some of that stuff now and kind of go through it in the car. Okay? So how much time are you going to allot to go pick her up at the airport? Probably don't want to have her sitting on the curb too long, okay? Think about that number. Now think about the third one. Now I really don't care what political party you're in. I want you to think about a president. Your favorite president is coming to this airport and you've gotten a call from the Secret Service. No one will ever think that we would put him in your car. So we think that you're a perfect cover. I need you to get to the airport and pick him up. Okay? How much time are you going to allot for that? What's your favorite president? Did any of those numbers as we went down through here, did they actually get longer for anybody? Why? It's the same run, you're doing the same day, same weather, same everything, but they got longer and longer and longer. Why? Why not the same contingency for your poor friend who just is living a country song versus the president?
They're more forgiving, they know you.
They know you, they're more forgiving. Importance. Okay? So you picked a president. I don't know if you picked Obama or George W. Bush. Okay? But if you picked one of those two and I switched it on you, would the importance be the same? Don't answer the question. I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay? Your importance may change. You know, the other president, let him sit there. Right? I just don't want to deal with him. Your estimate, even though the same process, same road, you're going through everything the same, all of a sudden get your personal bias put in here. How can I, as I'm the project manager, actually be able to deal with that? You've got a process you're following, but you bias your numbers, you bias your feelings, and I got to somehow figure out who you are and what you're doing and why you would bias those numbers if I'm going to do my job. Right? We're going to miss the pop quiz. You kind of got that idea. I have another presentation I give. And that presentation is I sit everybody around, it's on estimation, and I give everybody a quarter. I'm not trying to bribe them. I give them a quarter to flip, get them to put them into pairs, and I have them flip a quarter. And every time they flip the quarter, their partner writes down how long it takes to flip the quarter. Then I ask them, in a series of situations, how long is it going to take you to flip this quarter 20 times? Now, you have data. You actually have data. You know how long it took you to do it last time. The numbers come in. This is the number, the distribution of what people actually flip the quarters in. And you're saying, well, how come it goes clear out here? Well, the clock's still running on that one because that one, the quarter went down one of the vent holes, and so we're still trying to get a number on that one, okay? But whenever they go through and they actually have to make that estimate of how long they would take to flip quarters as part of their job, they double the number. They truly double the number. They have the data and they double the number. Help me out here. Why?
Probably better to under-promise and over-deliver is just a human nature.
It's human nature to under-promise and over-deliver. I guess I'd agree with that just a little bit. How many of you know about the student syndrome? Anybody? How many of you went to college? You know about it, okay? You went to college. You had to do a term paper. You knew on the first day of the quarter that you had to do a term paper. So that means that somewhere around week 2 or 3 of the quarter, or the term, you actually figured out kind of what that term paper would be on, right? And somewhere around the midterms, you actually had the outline cards done. So you're looking at me doubtfully there. Yeah, you had the outline cards done, and maybe somewhere around, maybe halfway between midterms and finals, you went to the professor and made sure that everything was right and looked cool, and then you handed it in a week early, right? Because you didn't want that to interfere with your finals, because finals are tough. How many of you did that? Okay, how many of you actually wrote the term paper like the night before and snuck it into the professor's office within like minutes of the actual deadline? Anybody do that? That is called the student syndrome. The minute you go and double the amount of time that it's going to take you to do a task, you are more likely to miss the date. If you are kept under pressure to get the task done, then you're actually probably going to get it done right. We have someone who's a coach here. How many games do you actually coach where you're able to come behind in the last few minutes and win the game?
Just a few.
But you can still do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You hear about it all the time. I think you're going to play a video later where there's that one shot that makes it happen. The pressure's on. People have to perform. So all of a sudden you see games in that last little bit turn around, and all of a sudden the underdog wins. The person, well, not necessarily the underdog, the person who's behind wins. Right? We perform better under pressure. This type of action actually makes things run worse. I've run a test, well, it wasn't a test. Critical chain project management works this way. So in one project in Israel, I actually took everybody's estimates, cut them in half, and ran the project. Okay? We got everything done on time. It was great. There was another incentive, they couldn't go home until the task was done. Yeah, about that, me being a mean guy. I'm really not. It's just trying to get things done. Okay? The other thing is what happens whenever, that I'm not going to talk about here, is what management does with estimates, right? Because management goes in pads and just messes up estimates beyond belief. So process is great. We really do like process, but it's people who actually affect us. And what we do is we like it because we can trust it. It's reproducible. It's transferable. We can move it from one place to another. But it takes our eye off the ball. It takes our eye off the fact that there's really people behind this process. And when something goes wrong, we go to point at the process and not go work on the person. So if I were to have my 2 volunteers come back up here, I'm not asking you to come up here, if I were to ask them to come back up here, and I changed things just a little bit, and I said to Kathy, do you think you can work with Michelle to improve the processes that she's working with so her performance improves? Would that have been a lot easier to do? It would have all of a sudden taken away this whole bit. But wait a minute, Michelle was still making mistakes. Do I have to put process on top of everything to keep absolutely everything? That builds bureaucracies. So by putting process in front of there, we focus on process and we forget about people. And it keeps us away from those. So we overuse process. That's what we go through. And whenever I just went through all these examples on estimation, that was you using process and then biasing the process so you wouldn't have to deal with some other outcome, which actually you're generating an outcome that's worse. It's all about people. It's people that follow instructions, don't follow instructions. They have the skills, they don't have the skills, they can communicate, they can't communicate. So the key that we have to do now is how do we deal with people? And that's where we have to pull in leadership. Now, I can't, oh, wait a minute, that's right, I forgot. My apologies. What is it that actually makes you excited? Why do you get up and go to work? Besides a paycheck, I think there's other reasons. Why do you guys get up and go to work in the morning? You're smiling. Why do you go to work in the morning?
I like to finish a project.
She likes to finish a project because what happens when you finish a project?
The customers are happy.
The customers are happy, but you've created something, right? That's pretty cool. Who else? What do you like to do when you go to work? What gets you up to get you to work? You smile a lot. See, don't smile in my presentations. Yeah, you smile a lot. Timothy, what is it that gets you to go to work?
Working with people I work with and getting things done.
Getting things done. Yeah. So you like to get done. That means you created something. Anybody else? Why do you go to work? John? Sense of accomplishment?
The challenge.
The challenge. The challenge of doing what?
Learning.
Of learning? There's a whole slew of reasons we go to work. A lot of them are based around creativity, right? I go to learn something, that gives me the ability to create. I go to achieve something, I go to work with people. That whole concept of being able to do something and see a result is a wonderful thing. There's a small problem. Process stifles creativity. If I have to follow a process, and every single day I have to follow a process, it's not so much fun to go to work anymore. And that's not a slam on process. That's why we have process. Creative accounting. Where'd that get us? No. We don't want to do creative accounting. We want to do real accounting. Follow the process. So it really is needed. But we're cognitive people. We like that challenge. We're not just turning the crank. So there's a guy out there by the name of Dan Pink. Does anybody know who Dan Pink is? Has anybody read the book Drive? He talks about how to actually get people motivated, how to get them moving. And I could summarize his presentation in 10 minutes, but the 10 minutes he spends summarizing his book is phenomenal. And I'd like you to listen to this. Like I say, it's 10 minutes, because he really has a good way of putting it all together and how to motivate people.
Our motivations are unbelievably interesting. I mean, I've been working on this for a few years, and I just find the topic still so amazingly engaging and interesting. So I want to tell you about that. The science is really surprising. The science is a little bit freaky, okay? We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think. There's a whole set of unbelievably interesting studies. I want to give you two that call into question this idea that if you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want. If you punish something, you get less of it. So let's go from London to the mean streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the United States. And let's talk about a study done at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Here's what they did. They took a whole group of students, and they gave them a set of challenges. Things like memorizing strings of digits, solving word puzzles, other kinds of spatial puzzles, even physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop. Okay, they gave them these challenges, and they said to incentivize their performance, they gave them 3 levels of rewards. Okay? So if you did pretty well, you got a small monetary reward. If you did medium well, you got a medium monetary reward. And if you did really well, if you were one of the top performers, you got a large cash prize. Okay? We've seen this movie before. This is essentially a typical motivation scheme within organizations, right? We reward the very top performers. We ignore the low performers, and the other folks kind of in the middle. Okay, you get a little bit. So what happens? They do the test. They have these incentives. Here's what they found out. 1, as long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they would be expected. The higher the pay, the better their performance. Okay, that makes sense. But here's what happens. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Now, this is strange, right? A larger reward led to poorer performance? How can that possibly be? Now, what's interesting about this is that these folks here who did this are all economists, 2 at MIT, 1 at the University of Chicago, 1 at Carnegie Mellon, okay, the top tier of the economics profession. And they're reaching this conclusion that seems contrary to what a lot of us learned in economics, which is that the higher the reward, the better their performance. And they're saying that once you get above rudimentary cognitive skill, it's the other way around. Which seems like this kind of, the idea that these rewards don't work that way seems vaguely left-wing and socialist, doesn't it? It's kind of this kind of weird socialist conspiracy. For those of you who have those conspiracy theories, I want to point out the notoriously left-wing socialist group that financed the research, the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is the mainstream of the mainstream coming to a conclusion that's quite surprising, seems to defy the laws of behavioral physics. So this is strange, a strange finding. So what do? They say, this is freaky. Let's go test it somewhere else. Maybe that $50 or $60 prize isn't sufficiently motivating for an MIT student, right? So let's go to a place where $50 is actually more significant relatively. Right? So let's take the experiment. We're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary. Small performance, low performance, 2 weeks' salary. Medium performance, about a month's salary. High performance, about 2 months' salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened, though, was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward. They did worst of all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists, over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. In fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about, there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money and they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that the science shows lead to better performance, not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, to direct our own lives. Now, in many ways, traditional notions of management run afoul of that. Management is great if you want compliance, but if you want engagement, which is what we want in the workforce today as people are doing more complicated, sophisticated things, self-direction is better. Let me give you some examples of this, of almost radical forms of self-direction in the workplace that lead to good results. Let's start with this company right here, Atlassian, an Australian company. It's a software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter on a Thursday afternoon, they say to their developers, for the next 24 hours, you can work on anything you want. You can work on it the way you want. You can work on it with whomever you want. All we ask is that you show the results to the company at the end of those 24 hours in this fun kind of meeting, not a star chamber session, but this fun meeting with beer and cake and fun and other things like that. It turns out that that one day of pure, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing software, a whole array of ideas for new products that otherwise had never emerged. One day. Now, this is not an if-then incentive. This is not the sort of thing that I would have done 3 years ago before I knew this research. I would have said, you want people to be creative and innovative? Give them a freaking innovation bonus. If you do something cool, I'll give you $2,500. They're not doing this at all. They're essentially saying, you probably want to do something interesting. Let me just get out of your way. One day of autonomy produces things that had never emerged. Right, let's talk about mastery. Mastery is our urge to get better at stuff. We like to get better at stuff. This is why people play musical instruments on the weekend. You got all these people who are acting in ways that seem irrational economically. They play musical instruments on weekends. Why? It's not going to get them a mate. It's not going to make them any money. Why are they doing it? Because it's fun, because you get better at it, and that's satisfying. Go back in time a little bit. I imagine this if I went to my first economics professor, a woman named Mary Alice Schulman, and I went to her in 1983 and said, Professor Schulman, can I talk to you after class for a moment? Yeah. I got this inkling. I got this idea for a business model. I just want to run it past you. Here's how it would work. You get a bunch of people around the world who are doing highly skilled work, but they're willing to do it for free and volunteer their time, 20, sometimes 30 hours a week. Okay, she's looking at you somewhat skeptically there. Oh, but I'm not done. And then what they create, they give it away rather than sell it. It's going to be huge. I mean, she truly would have thought I was insane. Okay, it seemed to fly in the face of so many things. But what do you have? You have Linux powering 1 out of 4 corporate servers in Fortune 500 companies, Apache powering more than the majority of web servers, Wikipedia. What's going on? Why are people doing this? Why are these people, many of whom are technically sophisticated, highly skilled people who have jobs? Okay, they have jobs. They're working at jobs for pay, doing sophisticated technological work. And yet, during their limited discretionary time, they do equally, if not more, technically sophisticated work, not for their employer, but for someone else for free. That's a strange economic behavior. Economists who look into it, why are they doing this? It's overwhelmingly clear. Challenge and mastery, along with making a contribution. That's it. What you see more and more is a rise of what you might call the purpose motive, is that more and more organizations want to have some kind of transcendent purpose, partly because it makes coming to work better, partly because that's the way to get better talent. And what we're seeing now is, in some ways, when the profit motive becomes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically sometimes, but also bad things just like not good stuff, like crappy products, like lame services, like uninspiring places to work. That when the profit motive is paramount, or when it becomes completely unhitched from the purpose motive, it's just, people don't do great things. More and more organizations are realizing this and sort of disturbing the categories between what's profit and what's purpose. And I think that actually heralds something interesting. And I think that the organizations that are flourishing, whether they're profit, for-profit, or somewhere in between, are animated by this purpose motive. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here's the founder of Skype. He says, our goal is to be disruptive, but in the cause of making the world a better place. Pretty good purpose. Here's Steve Jobs. I want to put a ding in the universe. All right? That's the kind of thing that might get you up in the morning and racing to go to work. So I think that, that we are purpose maximizers, not only profit maximizers. I think the science shows that we care about mastery very, very deeply. And the science shows that we want to be self-directed. And I think that the big takeaway here is that if we start treating people like people and not assuming that they're simply horses, slower, smaller, better-smelling horses, if we get past this kind of ideology of carrots and sticks and look at the science, I think we can actually build organizations and work lives that make us better off, but I also think they have the promise to make our world just a little bit better.
So how many of you do that in your projects? You actually treat your team as autonomous units, or how many of you actually have to stay on top of your team and give them their tasks and kind of direct them? They have to have process to follow because you're not letting them be autonomous. So if you really want to motivate and inspire your people, you want to get your jobs done quicker, you want to do better jobs, you want to create more value in your projects, treat your teams autonomously. Let them go off and do things. I just use the word team and autonomous in the same sentence. What does that mean? How do you do that?
You have to have trust.
You have to have trust. But if I'm going to give a whole bunch of autonomy out there, don't I have to also, doesn't that destroy a team? Because everybody's doing their own thing?
I don't think so. You can have a team and they can be autonomous, understanding that they're working toward the final end goal together. How we get there isn't as important as getting there. The destination is more important.
Did you hear that? That having people work together and having a goal, it's how we get there, it's getting to the end, that's what they're working for. You can lead your people, you can inspire your people. You don't have to have Tom, Dick, and Harry, and Sue, and Julie, and Sam go off doing things by themselves. You can have three of them working together autonomously to go do something, and each one has their own little set of things that they have to do. And let them go do it. Give them that ability. Yes, you have to have trust. You as the project manager have to be a leader. You have to have trust. You have to have trust in them. They have to have trust in you. Right? We have people, we don't want to manage them. Management is compliance. I love that little picture of where he's got the manager with the joystick and going to the guy's head and he's doing whatever the manager says. That does not get people motivated. Would you like somebody telling you what to do all the time? No. That's what gets you up and going to work. Okay? How about mastery? How do you let someone master something on your project?
Let them own it.
Pardon?
Let them own it.
Let them own it. I take each risk on my risk register of any project that I run, and I assign someone, or assign a name to that risk of someone. They volunteer, we throw them out there, okay, who's going to handle this one? But that person owns that. They know that risk inside out, forwards and backwards. They are the go-to person. If we think we're going to have problems because they're going to get overloaded, we might put a second person in there to team up with them. But that's about it. There was a company in Portland who actually decided that they were going to cross-train everybody. And so they took everybody and moved them over one slot so they get cross-trained. Performance went through the floor. Morale went through the floor. Because nobody could do anything good anymore. They felt bad because I'm doing this new job. Could I just go back to my old job so I could actually get something done and feel good about myself? Okay? So you can have some level of cross-training, but you have to let people step up to that and not assign it. People want to know that they can succeed, and we can do things time and time again. His analogy up there of people playing an instrument. How many of you play an instrument? How do you feel when you finally get that one piece done that, man, I've been working on that? You're back there nodding your head. It feels good. I play the guitar. You know, I'm an old man. My fingers just don't move the way they used to. It really feels good when I can get some sort of a riff done. It is, wow, that's cool. It really feels good, okay? Mastery, I can contribute. How about purpose? How many of you work for a nonprofit organization? Is the reason you work for a nonprofit organization because of the fact that it's just a paycheck, or do some of you really believe in your nonprofit organization? Is anybody willing to stand up or shout out why it is they work at their organization because of their purpose? What is the purpose that you're working for? Anybody? Got the guts?
Making people's lives better.
Making people's lives better. That will get you up in the morning going to work. Because whenever I go to work, I know I make people's lives better. That's what drives us, and that's what we have to do in our projects. You have to pull back the process. Don't keep putting process on top of people again and again and again. It creates bureaucracy. Give them a mission. Give them autonomy, give them mastery, let them have purpose. Okay? And with that, I'm out of time. I don't think there's really much else I was going to say other than, well, a summary slide. Process makes our lives easier. Process, though, challenges what we want to do because we want to be creative. Our personal biases come in and start destroying the process that's in place. And what we really need to do is drive leadership and lead our people and have them take care of themselves. That is where we need to go. Okay? So thank you very much. There's evaluation forms that are out there. Please fill out the evaluation forms. It is not just for the organization out here. It's also for me and for all the presenters. We all read those and we live by them because it tells us what you guys think. Okay? Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'm obviously wandering around.